Shalom, shalom לכולם. שלום, שלום לכולם. Of the week. We are a little bit behind, but it doesn't matter. Torah is Torah. It's not late, and you are not late. We are the Parashat Shoftim. Shoftim is translated as judges. Unlike in many all other communities, all other nations, or race, who take a Torah as just exclusive for their ethnic groups. Torah was not meant to be ethnic group, it was meant for human race. We have been brainwashed. The fabrics, cultures, traditions of other people have been washed down or washed away. That's the fabric of appointing judges according to the Torah is also washed away. Our greetings to our subscribers, our followers to the different platforms. Welcome to our weekly limud. This is Parashat Shoftim, the secret and the authentic kingship. Kingship, because when we look at, for example, the many cultures, the fabric of many cultures, the word of a king becomes a law. And we see that a king is also a judge in many places. So we see, and we will see how all these are connected, and how it relates to your own culture. Parashat Shoftim immediately follows the Parashat Re, and the precede Kitete in Moshe's final address before entering the promised land. The land of Canaan, its title, Shoftim, judges, signals at once the urgent need to establish a solid and incorruptible judicial system on Israelite soil. It doesn't matter where you are, particularly the Bandu Israelite. Your land is considered and deemed as the land of Israel. The Parashat first sets out the obligation to appoint judges and officials in every city, impartial and incorruptible, and vehemently condemns partiality and self-interest, summarizing the demand with the repeated imperative, tzedek, tzedek, tidof, pursue justice. We have been weaned from pursuing justice in our modern states and societies. It then lays down political and military rules. If the people ask for a king, he must be chosen according to the divine will and restricted in his horses wives, and the worth. The laws of war, distinction between sieges and open battles, require offering terms of peace to distant towns, regulate the treatment of captives, and provide for the harem. The ban, meaning the harem, the ban excommunication regarding idolatry cities. The Shoftim also addresses false prophets and idolatry by prescribing criteria for detecting lying prophets and ordering destruction of idols. It establishes the Supreme Court for complex cases, foreshadowing the Sanhedrin. They set out the procedure and the penalties for the rebellious cities. Anida, the text forbids sorcery and the divinations, recalls the material rights of the Kohanim and the Leviim, meaning Levites, and announced the coming of a prophet like Moshe, while giving criteria to test prophets. It instituted cities of refuge for involuntary manslayers, and defined the procedure for distinguishing murder from accidental killing. Theologically and ethically, Shoftim places social justice at the center of national life, remind rulers of limits of their power. The leaders are subjected to the laws, assert the requirement of purity in worship and the collective responsibility to preserve the covenant, and emphasizes that the prophetic authority must be verified by conformity of word and the deeds to the Torah. Finally, the Parashat functions as a charter of a tribal confederation. Law or any ambiguity within the Toraic tradition. It combines legal guarantees, local judges, and appeal to Supreme Court, protections for the vulnerable within moral principles, balance between authority and responsibility, vigilance against occult practices and false guides, and its double summons to justice exhort not only correct adjudication, but relentlessly pursuit of ideal of justice. For the Area Kadosh, the political and the military institutions of the Torah are primarily spiritual realities before they are mere social mechanisms. Kingship, for example, represent embodiment of the Sephirah of Malchut, the concrete attribution of power, and therefore must be understood and governed as a configuration of divine forces, to be harmonized rather than autonomous node of dominations or domination. Biblical prescription that limits the king do not multiply horses, wives, or worth. Keep a copy of the Torah for himself, read by the Ari as ritual safeguard, intended to prevent the Sephirah of Malchut from becoming encrusted with klipot, shells of impurity, proud enclosures that devour and scatter the nitzotzot, divine sparks, while the obligation of a written Torah for the sovereign symbolizes the internalization of the divine word. The king must not base his authority on force or accumulation, but remain connected to the source of law and order, so that his power serves tikkun, meaning rectification, and repairs spiritual fractures instead of worsening them. We see all this, what we are praising nowadays as human progress, is unfortunate. This is contrary to what is prescribed by the Torah. No matter how much we praise our institutions. Similarly, the rules of war, distinguishing sieges from battles, offering peace beforehand, treating captive humanly, and resorting to harem for idolatrous cities, receive cosmic significance. External conflict mirrors the inner struggle of Severat Hakelim, the shattering of vessels, and the dynamic of Tikkun. The injunction to offer peace before fighting is a strategy to preserve nitzotzot in the other, aiming to limit fragmentation and avoid scattering sparks into impure receptacles. Harem, as an extreme measure, appears as an operation to remove places from the influence of klipot to prevent the entrapment of sparks. But the Ari warns that violence itself, without proper kavanah, meaning intention, risk increasing cosmic dispersion. Therefore, the treatment of captives and the captured women is read as a matter of spiritual ethics. Each person embodied a portion of soul, and the halachic rules should, as far as possible, preserve dignity and the open paths of reintegration and inner repair. Finally, because every action produces a really spiritual effect, the Ari insist on the primacy of an authority bound to the Torah and guided by the prophetic wisdom, sanctions, judgments, and the act of war require not only formal legality, but above all, a reparative kavanah and a ritual framing, without which human intervention risks not only repairing the fracture, but amplifying its consequences. All this, what we have discussed above, based on the portion of the Torah, Shoftim, is propounded by our sages, our masters, through generation, is also to highlight to us how we have gone too far from the ideal that the societies or modern societies have led us and drifted us. We will go a little bit on a pause, and the Bisharat Shmaya, we will continue to look at it from the Bantu Israelite perspective, which others throughout time have neglected and they abused and they called lost tribe. Stay tuned.
Bana Congo, Bana Congo, yeah, Bana Congo. Rise up, Bana Congo, Bana Congo.
True damage strikes the soul, the memory, and the identity. How do we rebuild what has been destroyed? It asks us to understand.
For the first time in history, a work of halacha brings together the wisdom of Ben Ish Hai, the mystical secrets of the Ari HaKadosh, and the rabbinical decrees of the chief rabbi of Africa for the Shomrei, the observance of Nusak Afriki. Ben Meshek Beti, Nusak Afriki. Volume 1. A Sefer of restoration, an act of memory, an instrument of sanctification. For the descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel, guardians of an eternal covenant. This is not just another book, it is a path toward holiness.
Welcome to Shidduch Afriki, the Bantu Israelite matrimonial matchmaking agency, supervised by the Chief Rabbi of Africa Pinhas Eliyahu Shadi. Are you seeking an authentic union based on halakhic principles? We're here to guide you every step of the way. Book your interview. +33 95624 5409.
The Garment of Eternity, the science of destiny and transcendence in the Congo Zardishula tradition. A sacred procession crosses the threshold of Kalunga, the luminous veil between worlds.
Oh, wow. Shalom, shalom. Welcome back, and thank you very much for those who are listening and reacting to our limud. Baruch Hashem, we are back, and we continue with our Torah portion. Again, warm greetings to each one of you. It is a very difficult moment of human history that when things are being replaced, the succeeding generations could not tell what reality is and what is not. As our sages have said, we live in the world of falsehood. Until one returns to the authentic wisdom, and the authentic wisdom could only be within your clan, within your tribe. There is no such a thing as nations as it is being applied today. The word nations is here to erase your tribal, your ancient, your ancestral knowledge and the memories. The secret of authentic kingship according to the Bantu Israelites. The nomination of a king in many Bantu Israelite societies is first set within a cosmological horizon where the visible and invisible dimensions of the world are continuous. Political power is not seen as a mere human mechanism of social organization, but as an embodiment of a sacred order transmitted by the ancestors and the Supreme Creator. Zambe and Sof, investors' right, coronation ceremonies, offering, fumigations, ritual baths, symbolically mark the transmission of a cosmic mandate. The future sovereign receives not only the outward signs of power, insignia, scepter, titles, but also the ritual responsibility to maintain cycles of fertility, the rains, and the collective prosperity. In some traditions, one finds the idea of a king charged with a specific spiritual power, a power that many manifest through management of cults, custody of a sacred object, or staging of major rhythmic ceremonies, dances, sacrifices, addresses that regenerate the bond between the living and the ancestors. The sovereign's central role is a mediatory. He is a primary intermediary through whom the ancestors speak into the present and by whom the living's requests are conveyed to the invisible world. Practically, this is expressed in a holding of annual ceremonies, which the civilization calls idolatry and idol worship. To us, is not. Ritual calendar. The king's capacity to preside over fertility rites for good harvest, health of heads, human fertility, and his role in arbitrating major collective crises, plagues, drought, famines. This mediation requires personal qualities, exemplariness, ritual purity, symbolic mastery, and access to ritual knowledge, formulas, gestures, offering, sometimes transmitted by priestly lineage. The king may also be the custodian of founding myths, the cultic object that embodied the continuity of political body, and the figure around whom the people's origin stories are gathered. For the Bene Israel, despite secularization, royal power is really absolute. It operates within a network of complementary institutions that guarantee social continuity and limit accesses. Council of Elders, clan assemblies, local chiefs, and the priest play a decision-making and a consultative role. These bodies ensures the application of customary norms, control ritual legitimacy of the king's decision, and hold the right, sometime effective, to call the sovereign to account and to replace him in a case of serious failure. Persistent illness, inability to ensure prosperity, behavior judged impure. This mixed model responded to a dual comparative, perceiving the king's unifying symbolism as the embodiment of political totality, while allowing social resilience through effective decentralization of power. In some kingdoms, inheriting the spirituality of the 10 tribes of Israel, specialized officers, provincial governors, masters of ceremonies, military advisors, hold clearly defined competencies and make a political apparatus more technocratic and viable in the long term. For Bnei Moshe, the idea of good king is combined with an ethic of service. The king is expected to be one who protects the people and the land. Unlike nowadays, our respective kings and queens are made to be the subservient of modern thing called the states. Democracy, the concept of democracy, the concept of one nation. Not an agent of personal domination. His legitimacy depends on observable signs, retribution of worth, fair judgment, ritual capacity, and moral qualities, sacred humility, and temperance, a sense of justice, failure to preserve fertility, the rains. All of peace can be interpreted as cosmic sign that the king has lost his favor, all his strength. The traditional discourse, therefore, closely links political competence to ritual success and the collective well-being. For Bnei Congo, the decision to make war is not only pragmatic, it is preceded by ritual and political consultations. Diviners, oracles, and the spiritual leader perform divinations, like Yosef Hasadik in Mitzrayim, which is translated as Egypt, to probe the will of the ancestors, the spirit of the land. Unlike today, we do not see that the land speaks, but in many communities, such knowledge is still preserved. But with the multinational institutions, companies, sway and subdued and infused the profit-making mentality into our mind. Notables and the local chiefs are consulted to access material and the human risk. This dual logic, ritual and pragmatic, aims to avoid actions that would further deepen the cosmic fracture. If the ancestors oppose war, it is delayed and reclassified. When war is declared, it is framed by rites of authorization, offerings, sacrifices, intended to legitimize the action and the requested protection from invisible forces. For the Torah Aleph, customary rules govern how to fight and the fate of the captives. Rather than total destruction, many Bantu Israelite traditions favor absorbing the vanquished, incorporation into the victor's political structures, institutional marriages, service obligations, and the integration rituals that erase marks of antagonism. This strategy is a double advantage: practical, restoring productive and demographic strength; ritual, reducing the dissipation of potentially dangerous energies. In other context, when a threat is judged spiritually contaminating, for example, a city perceived as harboring practices that endangers the ritual order, more radical measures may be taken to neutralize the threat. Ritual destruction of cult objects, ostracism, or punishment aimed at purifying the spiritual landscape. But even these operations are normally surrounded by rites intended to contain the spiritual effect of violence. For the Bnei Israel, after hostilities, the priority is restoring the broken vessels out of experience. I am one of those who participated in battles, different battles. But when our natives, our respective families were engaging in the practical of purifying somebody who returns from war, what did we receive? We receive a condemnation from the clergyman. This involves a practical purification, ceremonies, ritual baths, fumigations, sacrifices to appease spirit, rite of reconciliation between families and clans, and sometimes restitution, all distribution of goods. These acts are not merely symbolic. They are reinscribe victims and the victors into a shared social fabric, dissolve hostility, and allow the normal resumption of agricultural and social cycles. The king, as a mediator, often plays a central role in these ceremonies of repair and the reaffirmation of order. It is crucial to emphasize diversity. The bundle world encompasses hundreds of societies with distinct trajectories. Models range from strongly centralized kingdoms, for example, certain episodes of the Zulu state or Swahili polities, to more fragmented systems where royal authority is largely symbolic. History has also altered these structures. Long-distance trade, Islamization, the Atlantic slave trade, and finally, European colonization transformed the nature and the means of power. Militarization, bureaucratization, mutation of rights. In particular, external pressure, sometimes encouraged centralization and the professionalization of armies, while weakening traditional rituals' power. Elsewhere, they produced secretism, where external religious elements were integrated into local practices. Taken together, these features outline a political logic where legitimacy rests on the ability to maintain cosmic harmony. The king is above all a ritual and moral guarantor of the continuity of a political body, while being held in check by institutional counterweights and ethical obligations versus those who have been labeling us that we do not know how to govern ourselves. It is rather opposite. They have copied from others, in particular from the melanated ones, the Bantu Israelite, B'nai Moshe, if you like. The war is viewed through these prisms, instrumental, but to be handled with a caution, always integrated into a system of meaning that seeks repair rather than unnecessary destruction. This framework helps explain not only concrete historical practices, but also forms of government that privileged mediation, restorations, incorporation as techniques of pacification and governance. Once again, Chaverim, at different platforms, thank you very much. This is the Torah portion of the week as brought to you by the Chief Rabbinate of Africa through the Chief Rabbi of Africa. Baruch Adonai, Le'olam, Amen, Ve'amen.